guys, I'm Ryan Houston and welcome to my fly tying channel. This channel contains hundreds of different videos covering all manner of different patterns, techniques and styles of fly tying. There's something here to suit almost everybody, so hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, let's get on with the show.
Hi guys, welcome back. So today we're going to tie one of the most famous of all salmon flies, and that is the Sunray shad. So this fly has probably accounted for tens if not hundreds of thousands of salmon since its inception. As I said, for one of the flies that I tie myself, it's certainly one of the ones that I get asked for the most often, and for clients of mine it has landed the biggest fish of any of my flies to date, including a couple of fish up in the 50-pound region. So I like to tie it on a hard plastic tube. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flare the end of that, and that will give us something to tie up against, and then let that set itself. So this tube is obviously longer than is needed, so we're going to cut it back to length. And what you can do is you can make your tube slightly longer than is actually needed, and whoever wants. So some people like their hook to be quite far back, and others prefer to cut it quite short. So here I've got about 40 mil or so, and what I do is I'll just take a blade and then just mark the tube, and then it should snap. So I'm going to put that into my holder here, and how I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a strong bar, and then I'm going to slide it in, and it's going to settle back into this little bit of the holder here, and then by tightening down onto the metal pin, that pulls the plastic against the holder and it shouldn't move on us. So thread wise, I'm going to use this Textreme Black, and I have found this to be a very strong and thin thread, so I'm using it quite a bit. I'm just going to start the thread on there and then trim off that. So use some sort of braid, flat braid or tinsel, or some people will have no body whatsoever, but what I'm going to use is it's a braid, but it's not a flat, it's like a round silver braid. And I think the fact that it's not flat means that it reflects in different angles, because it doesn't give an even body finish as such. Now coming back here, and I'm leaving this bit for to attach a junction tubing, and then I'll come forward again. How we're going to tie this is I'm going to take super glue and super glue the tube, and while that's still wet, then I'm going to wrap this braid into that, and then there'll be no need for any ribbon on it because it's adhered to the tube from below. And you may or may not be able to see now, but the sort of unevenness of the finish of this, and that's given just reflective surfaces. So we come up to the front and we leave as far as we need for our head, and tie that in. I'm just going to flip it back, tie over it, and trim that off. So now we have to decide how long the fly is that we're going to tie. So get a little ruler, and here we're going for well, we can tie it anything from 80 mil maybe up to maybe 150 mil, but the most common that you would get asked for is probably between 100 and 120 mil. So if we say there's the front of the fly, so whenever I want to pick how long this fly is going to be, it's going to be coming roughly to this part of my vise, and that'll be about 120-125 mil. So, first thing for the wing is we're going to build it up in levels, and the first bit that's going to go down is white bucktail. So if we take a bunch of white bucktail and trim that off. Some people will stack it, but I think that's unnatural. So what I do is just to get out the very shortest stuff, and what I want this to do is to come and support the wing above where the hook will be. So the hook's going to come back to somewhere around about here, so we want this to have that kind of length to it. So we flip it over until we like the way it lies, and then I'm going to transfer hands and trim this off. Set that up on top and wrap our thread over it. And now what we want to do is I'm going to flatten that with my nail. That gets it to splay slightly around the shank, and we get this sort of V effect to support our wing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my super glue and just run it over the tips of that, and then bind that down, and that just means the whole thing won't come apart on us. And then we're going to take those wraps back to where our tinsel begins. So next we want to put in a little bit of flash. So the first bits I use for this are crystal hair, and you could use silver crystal hair, or you could use pearl crystal hair, or whatever you want. I'm going to use crystal hair silver on this one, and I'm going to tie in one strand of it that's back roughly the length of the white hair, then fold it back and trim that one off to the same length. The reason I don't really want the crystal hair being the longest flash in is because I find it prone to tangle a little bit. So then we need to build our wing up. So depending on how big you want the fly to be, you may choose to put some sort of fox or something in there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use black nayat as the supporting wing. So this has a nice taper to it, and it has a bit of strength to it. So we take our bunch of nayat, and what I'm going to do is get rid of all this short wool rubbish from this end of it, because all it'll do is bulk the wing up. So when we're happy with it, as you can see, it has this sort of thickness to the base of it, and then this little bit of a taper. So I'm going to come back here. As I said, I'm coming to the full wing length to here, so I want the top wing to be shorter, so I'm just going to trim that off then to the appropriate length, set it up on top. So each time the cut ends are coming short of our tube end here, and again I'm just going to flatten that out across the top of the shank of the tube there. And again, it's just being held in place by our wraps at the minute, and then I'm just going to run a little bit of glue onto the tips of that and wrap over it, and that will allow it to sort of taper down into the front of the head. Again, then looser wraps maybe just to take us to the back. So you could even get away with fishing it as it is, I suppose, but what we're going to do is just to comb out the nayat, and you can see that sort of blends then with our bucktail. So next, another bit of flash, and for this I'm going to use Peacock Mirage. Again, I'm going to lay a strand on that comes to the length of the nayat, tie across that, fold it back over the top and tie that in, and then trim this other strand off at the same length. top hair layer on our wing, then you want to get a really good cashmere goat. Now this one came from Sean Stanton at Frankensnilde. So I'm just going to take a bunch of that and take out the short stuff again. Now this is quite a long taper on it, and given the length of this fly we'd probably lose a lot of it in that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the tips and pull them out and then just realign them again. And that just is, it maintains the taper but gives me a little bit more strength to it, if you understand. And just measure that until it reaches the predetermined point that we chose, and then swap hands and trim that as well. So again, we'll set that up and put a wrap across it. Now what you'll find is that the goat is a harder fibre, much harder to compress, and therefore more prone to pulling out. So I'm not maybe splaying it as much around the head up here as the other fibres, but this one I think that the adhesive is the most important in. So we'll just get the bases glued and then get them wrapped down before that dries. And then comb that into it as well. And as you can see now, we have this really nice taper with the supporting wings underneath. So to finish the fly, we're going to put some peacock on top, so 5 or 6 strands, depending on how big the fly is. And what I like is that I'm going to try and utilize this curvature or up curve to the tip of these fibres. I like the way that flicks up at the end, so we'll just try and align these. Now I'm not going to take them full length of the wing because they're quite brittle, so if they were sticking out by themselves out the back they tend to snap off, so I'm stopping a bit short. And probably around about there, so then we'll just hold that in place and tie that bunch in up on top. Trim that off. As you can see, the curvature works with the wing and the fibres of it sort of just knitted into it. Now I'm going to add some jungle cock. So if we take a feather from each side of our cape, just hold them by the tips together and then just strip them back so that they're the same size. I'm going to tie in on this little white portion, and that, because it's flattened, it prevents the feather from sort of spinning off at whatever angle it feels like. So I just tie forward over that, and then I'm just going to pull the stalks back and tie over them. And now it's time to finish our head shape. So just use the thread and then finish however you do it. As I said, I finish by hand, but some people will whip finish with a tool. And then just trim these off, and that is our fly tied. We just need to varnish the head. So to varnish the head, what I'll do is to use a thin clear first, and if you've got a really neat finished head that would do it. But personally I like to go over it then with a black. I'll just trim off any little bits that might be sticking out there. So I'll let that dry out there, and as I said, then once it is dried, what I'll do is I'll finish it with this stuff. So what I've done here to create a black is I've taken Sally Hansen Hard as Nails, which is probably my preferred finish coat anyway for Eden and Clear, and then I've added Vineyard's black into that, and it creates a really glossy black finish on your flies. So we'll let that dry and then coat it with this. Then all that you need to do is you add a junction tubing onto the back, so a bit of silicone or PVC or whatever it is that you use, and then that can accept your hook. So as I said, one of the most successful salmon flies invented, the Sunray Shadow. So hopefully you liked the video. If you did, give me a like, subscribe, check out all the other hundreds of videos that are on the channel. There's something there for everybody. And until next time, tight lines, and thanks for watching.